I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here. Glad for the early snow. It's kind of pretty outside right now, but we know what we've got coming. So I encourage everyone to be careful, to put their snow driving mode in gear, because I think there have already been a lot of accidents. Roads are slick, so be very careful. But we know what's ahead of us with a winter, and that's all good. We enjoy it here. And we support the businesses that flourish in the winter and that need snow, and it's a good thing. Well, in the past week, like everybody else, we've been focused on the midterm elections and all kinds of elections here in Minnesota. We're pleased to continue that focus today, and our intent is to keep our viewers and listeners and readers and Insight News connected to policymakers that we have elected, to those who challenged them, and to ideas, to their own voices, so that we can together demonstrate and reflect a sense of equity, a sense of ownership of the political process, the systems that have been created, that we have created to organize and order our community. So we call the Monday program, in that regard, governance at the neighborhood level. And the idea behind that is that as parents and neighbors and community, as small businesses, we owe it to ourselves to talk, to be in touch, and to have our conversations between us be heard by and include policymakers that we have elected. So we're doing that today, and we will continue to do that. To do that work, I thank my friends and colleagues over at the Hawthorne Neighborhood Council, Hawthorne Neighborhood Association. Diana Hawkins and D. Phillipps are both here every Monday, and I thank them for supporting and participating. I thank my colleague, my writing partner, Brenda Lyle-Gray, who joins me every day, 5 days a week, from the mountains of New Mexico. Brenda, hi to you, first of all, and Diana and Dee, hi to you.
Hey, Al. How are you?
Good. Top of mind, anything going on, Diana, that you want to tell us about, or Dee?
Well, first I want to say, we talk about the elections, and I just want to give a shout out to my cousin, who's the first Black Congresswoman that will be going to Congress from Western Pennsylvania. Her name is Summer Lee, and she was the first African American to hold that seat a couple of years ago. So when you talk about the elections, I'm pleased to share that today versus sharing some bad news.
Well, it's personal. It's personal for you. Maybe we can.
What was her name again, Diana? I didn't get it.
Her name is Summer Lee.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Sorry about.
Maybe we can get her on the show sometime in the future. It'd be great to get her here as well.
Yep, and I all of those who won in Minnesota, I'm glad that we did what we did. We did a good thing.
D, thoughts, feelings? Well, I can see your smile. You're muted, but your smile says a lot.
Yeah, she's muted. You know that.
I was just really pleased with the midterms.
Okay. Great. Well, let's jump into today's program. I see I have both Mary Moriarty, who won the contest to be the Hennepin County Attorney. I'll bring her in first, and then in a minute we'll go to Maria Issa, who is a trailblazer and who's now a member of the House of Representatives from St. Paul, and we'll talk about her amazing story and presence and what she's going to be bringing. Mary Moriarty, congratulations, and I'm excited that you have chosen to talk about your victory here on the conversation. So how are you doing, first of all?
Well, first of all, thank you. And secondly, of course, I would come back on your show. I talked a lot about transparency and accessibility and accountability, and this is part of that. So I'm thrilled to be back here. Thank you for inviting me.
So how do you feel? How do you feel? I mean, you had a tough contest. You had a great contest. You prevailed. I can tell you that we didn't endorse you. We endorsed your opponent, but we knew that either way, the city, the county, were going to be in wonderful hands. And we are pleased with your election. That's the other part. And so, and I think that's the best part of our system. You know, we have choices and the goal is to have a lot of great choices. And in your case, that's exactly what we had. So again, being transparent is to say that we make this recommendation, but now to say that we're pleased with the will of the voters.
And I was aware of your endorsement, and I respect that, as I respect the endorsements of others. And one thing that I want to be really clear on is that the campaign is behind us, and I look forward. I want to work with people, whether they supported me or not. That is part of my job. That's what I'm looking forward to do. I'm already in the process of doing that. So my message actually is to all of the people in Hennepin County, whether they supported me or not. I'm going to work very hard to be your county attorney.
What are you doing now to make the transition happen? What's after the polls close and you were declared the winner? What are the first 10 things that have happened?
Well, some of that started happening Tuesday night after it was clear that I had won. I had conversations with Mike Freeman and Jacob Fry and many others. And so that work started right away. This morning, we issued a press release announcing the co-chairs of our transition team, who are Representative Cedric Frazier, whom I know you know, and Professor Mark Osler, who was he teaches at St. Thomas now, but he was a former federal prosecutor. And we met yesterday, and we are putting together our transition team. And the purpose of that is to get us ready to hit the ground running when I am sworn in on January 2nd. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen. And that's what we're doing right now, not just waiting until I'm sworn in.
Give a description, if you would, again, of the mandate, the mission, the scope of work, the authority, and responsibility of the Hennepin County Attorney.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the county attorney, actually, Minnesota is one of the few states to call it the county attorney. Most states call it the DA or district attorney. And when I said that in the campaign, I would say to people, do you know what the county attorney is or does? And it's okay if you don't. I would say most people said, I have no idea. So it's one of those positions that's kind of mysterious to people. And one of my goals is to make it very transparent and understandable, because it is the people's system and they deserve to understand how it works. Most people are familiar with the idea that the county attorney prosecutes felony crimes in Hennepin County, and they do. And they also prosecute juvenile offenses, including truancy. They do child protection. So that's a very big role in determining whether somebody's children are taken out of their home. They do mental health commitments. They do child support. And so there are a lot of different ways that they are involved. And they also have a civil division. And in all of those areas, there's a great amount of discretion and subjectivity. And so one of the things I talked about during the campaign was making sure that we were not worsening racial disparities by the decisions that we were making. I talked a lot about relying on data and research-based approaches so that we know what we're doing is actually based on science and research. And that data piece is appropriate because if something isn't working, then we need to change course. And if something is working, we need to be sharing that with the community so that they understand what's working as well.
How big is the organization and how is it organized? How will you change it, if at all?
Yeah, it has approximately 480 employees. So it's it's the largest public law office in the state. As you'll remember, I ran the second largest public law office in the state, which is the public defender's office. The structure is something that we're taking a look at now. Does that work for our goals? Does it not? So that's part of what the transition team does. And I'm certain there will be some changes. But one of the things I want to assure the staff too, because I know any change is scary for people.
Mhm.
And they have had the same leadership. I know Mike Freeman was county attorney for 24 years, and I think
Mhm.
Amy Klobuchar was in between there. But it's kind of scary to have somebody new coming in and wonder what they're going to do. What was wonderful, though, is I've had the opportunity to talk with some of the staff. I've had some of them reach out to me. I went to the Minnesota Association of Black Lawyers gala Saturday night,
Mhm.
and I was walking around and I had a couple of people say, "Hey, I worked for you." So I got to meet some people and ask them if they had ideas about how we could do better. And they said yes. So there's a lot of enthusiasm there. So what I'm doing right now is really building relationships, reaching out to partners, people with whom I will need to work and want to work with. And I will be listening to what staff has to say as well about what's working and what isn't working.
You said the largest law firm, public law firm in the state. Does that include the Attorney General's team?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
Okay. So you've got more people and
Yes.
activity there. So I didn't know that. That's amazing. So what's the distinction between the county attorney and the public defender?
Oh, sure.
And
That's a
those
great question.
organizations, those roles, those relationships.
Yes. So public defenders are appointed to represent one client at a time. And their responsibility is to represent that person to the best of their ability within ethical bounds. The role of the county attorney is very different. The role of the county attorney is to do the right thing in every case. They are often referred to as ministers of justice. So the county attorney represents all of the people of Hennepin County.
Mhm.
And the idea is to do the right thing, to keep people safe in a fair and equitable way. So the responsibilities are very, very different. And I will be a partner with the county or the public defender's office. We actually don't know who the new chief public defender is going to be. And I will say it's actually pretty exciting. I've had an opportunity. I went to Chief O'Hara's swearing in this week, met him, and we had some conversations. We'll be meeting with him. So he is brand new. And he is somebody who comes from a system where they had a consent decree, which I think we can expect here. We have a new sheriff, Dewana Witt, and
Yep.
she and I know each other quite well and work together well. And we're looking forward to working with each other. So there are new people in quite a few positions. And so I think that there should be, and I think there is energy and cause for optimism and excitement that we are all going to work together to make this a better system, a safer community for all of us, and a more just system.
But the chief public defender is appointed by the court? Is that
No.
it? Or
No,
explain that.
it's difficult. The Hennepin County Public Defender's Office, or each public defender's office, was actually funded by individual counties back when I started in the 90s. And then the problem with that is that depending on which county you were in, some counties were more generous with their funding than others. And in fact, Hennepin County was always quite generous with public defender funding. In fact, when I started, I was in the same union as the county attorneys. So whatever they got, we got in terms of salary and resources. And that worked out very well. And then the State Board of Public Defense took over all of the public defense in Minnesota. And that worked very well for some greater Minnesota counties where their public defenders were on contract, getting paid not very much. It was not a good system. So for some public defenders throughout the state, that takeover was a really good thing. It was not for public defenders in Hennepin County or other public defenders in the metro area, because those of us who were already county employees remained county employees, and every new employee, and I think it was after 1996, came in as a state employee. So that created two pay scales,
Okay.
two benefits, and that's where the salary disparities came in. Right now, the public defender's starting salary is much lower than the county attorneys, and that actually grows very quickly into a gap of about 20 or 30,000. So it's a huge problem for hiring and retention for the public defender's office.
What are you doing now? You say you've got your committee chairs. What are the steps between now and January when you're sworn in?
Yeah.
What do you see as the work at hand to make a smooth transition into your role of leadership?
Yeah, first of all, a smooth transition is what we really want. That's what the staff needs. That's what the community needs. And so that's what we're working very hard to do. So what that looks like is getting together a team of subject matter experts who are also familiar with organizational change. And we are connecting with people in the county attorney's office and also the city attorney's office, as I said, Chief O'Hara, everybody else with whom we are going to play a major role in partnering going ahead. So we're meeting with people, making sure that we understand what their goals are and how we can help each other. And also looking at and familiarizing ourselves with the current policies and practices of the county attorney's office. I've talked a lot about how they haven't been very transparent. And so really understanding what their policies are, who's in what position, what do they do, how are the resources being spent. Data is a big thing to me. So I want to know what they're doing in terms of data. I have a partial idea. So it's learning all of that. It's collecting information. It's listening to people. It's collaborating. And when you think about it, I think we have about 6 weeks left, which may surprise people until the beginning of January. And so that time is going to go by very quickly. So there's a lot of work to be done between now and then.
Let me bring in Maria Issa. She's running or has succeeded in joining the Minnesota State Legislature representing House District 65B. And if you can, please stay with us because I'd love to have a conversation between you and Maria about the challenges and the excitement and the experience of being newly elected. This is your first elected position, right, Mary Moriarty?
Yes, this is also the first time I've run for office. So it's all a new experience.
That's awesome. Maria, my friend, how are you? Good to see you. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me on Insight once again. It's great to be here with you all, Al, and Insight. So much love and thank you for your support.
Absolutely. We'll talk about how you felt election day, what was going through you. How did the day pass for you?
Well, we were active to the last polling moment you can walk into the poll. We had a Movimiento DFL caucus mobile that made sure that folks knew their rights to vote, that folks had accessibility to get to the polls. And it was a really, really wonderful, wonderful time on election day. And I was really positive throughout the whole day for not only my seat, but also for just this trifecta in our state that I really worked hard within our Latino community, amongst our Latino community, to get the vote out.
What does a trifecta mean? Why don't you explain that to people that might not be up on that? We've written about it, but it's always good to hear it from somebody who's in it.
Well, we took the statewide leadership. We kept the statewide leadership with our governor, all the way from our governor position, our lieutenant governor, our secretary of state, also our attorney general, and our state auditor, alongside with being able to flip the Senate for the DFL majority and keeping the House pretty strong. Alongside making history with the most BIPOC legislature that this great state has seen. So we made history.
Can you describe that element of this election? I don't know if you guys have met as a caucus yet. I'm sure you will if you haven't. But how does that look? What is the complexion? What is the change in terms of BIPOC presence in the legislature?
The change is that our communities are now represented and unifying into making sure that equity is at the lead when these decisions on passing laws and continuing the laws that reflect our communities are standing put in this state. So when we say the most, this is something that our youth get to be a part of when they get the chance to vote, that they see a reflection of themselves. That's something that I didn't have growing up in this state. I was born and raised outside of just appointed positions from our governor who appointed faces like my mother, who was the director of equal opportunity when I was born and the first Latina for offices of equal opportunity. That was like a big deal. But now we've got a wave of over 30 BIPOC folks making sure that our communities are front and center and making these decisions. And it's just a real great feeling to know that we're going to get things done.
What's really striking is the number of BIPOC women in the Senate. That's huge. Talk about that if you would.
Yes, my dear friends and sisterhood, we have now the first 3 Black women entering as the first time Black women have been elected into the Minnesota State Senate, right? And not only, we also have the youngest in Senator-elect Zainab Mohammed out of District 63, who
25, right? 25 years old?
25 years old, my young sister in movement, and in making sure that young girls in this state are reflected, whether they are Black, whether they are Muslim, or whether considering, once they get out of college, that they want to run for office.
Mary, what do you think about that? I think that all of you represent a phenomenal change. I mean, add to that, Lieutenant Governor Peggy standing strong. Add to that Dawana, as you mentioned, as the sheriff. We got a great presence, I think, on both the Ramsey County and Hennepin County boards now. Some elected positions in the suburbs. A lot of change happening. So what do you think about, and when you guys see each other in passing, what is the knowing eye contact going to be saying from the heart? Mary, what do you think?
I had the privilege of campaigning with Zainab and so many of the people, Peggy Flanagan, and campaigning is really hard. It can be really, really hard and grueling. And we all went through it together. And we talked about our aspirations and the things that would change when everybody was elected. And so it is tremendously exciting for me to see what's happened with Maria and Zainab and others. I know there's going to be change, and change that we haven't had because it's been blocked in the Senate. And so I see a bunch of enthusiastic, really brilliant people who bring different perspectives to this, who are going to bring much needed change for our entire community. So I couldn't be more excited to be in my position and to be partnering with the legislature on some exciting reforms that I think will happen this next session.
I just want to add that I commend you ladies, because there were a lot of women elected to office this time. And that means we're holding strong. So I commend you ladies and all the other ladies that were elected, because now is our chance.
Well,
and not only the chances, it's now's the time. That's what I believe. It's more than that. This is the time for change. And I think this work and these successes are the reflection of the change that is unstoppable, that's inevitable, and that is at hand. So Maria, talk a minute about the district that you were elected to and your story. I know your mom, your family has been active in the community, but it's always good to hear it again and again.
Well, I like to hear that the time is here, the time is now. That's the slogan that my mom would say, like, get to work. And that was the slogan of our campaign. I represent the District 65B, which is where our capital stands, downtown St. Paul, alongside a little bit of West 7th that was still kept in after redistricting. My beloved barrio of the west side of St. Paul, and our new city in district and county of West St. Paul and Dakota County now that is a part of 65B. So, and I just am reminded that I have a little strip of the east side border too, in the Payne and into Payne Avenue to Minnehaha and 7th, West 7th going over there. So I am a St. Paul girl. Puerto Rican, born in Minnesota, raised my entire life in St. Paul, raising a little 3-year-old girl. You'll see a beautiful Afro Boricua girl named Loisa running around behind me, who's growing up like I grew up, around the work and community and activism, from human rights, social justice lenses, knowing our worth as young women of color, and not backing down. And that's what's led me here. I'm an artist. I'm a hip hop artist. And I like to say hip hop because it is the culture of movement into what's opened up and expanded different sectors of education and institution. And that's how I grew up, working for several multicultural arts nonprofit organization as a youth. I've been reflecting a lot with my peers and my campaign. I was 16 years old when I first started my job, working at nonprofit organizations, making hip hop and activism and building curriculums for youth like myself who didn't see ourselves in these spaces, who were told that we couldn't do things, who were born as statistics, and really working on those cycles of breaking the cycle, breaking the chains, and understanding law and understanding democracy and how civic engagement is important. And it takes a lot in my community to see, because not everybody who is Latinx has the opportunity to vote, has the right to vote. And I'm here alongside so many folks, not just within our Latinx community, but our other immigrant communities who refuged here, and let me know at a young age that I had a privilege by just being born here. So that was a big part of, and it continues to be a big part of the influence of what we are going to make happen. And I want to congratulate Mary. I'm on the Ramsey County side, but when I seen the Hennepin County, I know Minneapolis loves me, and I always got to tell them I'm a St. Paul girl, but it would just show so much of the momentum and movement that has been created in our counties and in our twin cities to say that folks, if they're not ready to adapt to the change, they're going to have to get ready, because it's happening.
So let me throw a tough one out for both of you. Maybe it's not tough, but I'll throw it out anyway. I read, and I'm reading about this whole notion of the patriarchy. And I think there's a discussion that we should have about the way the world is laid out right now. What's the existing base common understanding about how the world works? And I could say that if you didn't give it much thought, you would say it's about, men controlling and owning everything. And if you go deeper, you say really it's about white men controlling and presenting the idea that the world is their idea, right? Or that that God is their idea, and it's about a system that relies on, in so many ways, using force of one level or another to determine who gets access to quality of life, to resources, to materials, and to opportunity and to power. And that the nature of that power in a global sense is extractive, exploitative, and at the end of the day, disserves all humanity. So this is Al McFarlane talking, right? I'm just talking. And, I could be 1,000 miles off, but respond if you will. So what I see happening and changing is a way to look at, to examine, the flaws and the problems, not to discard or throw away, but to say, are there other ways that we can be better human beings? And can we arrive at some process that is really based on balance and justice and balance? And balance has to be reflected in how we relate to each other across our many, many identities and our many, many ways of looking at and assembling reality in the world. So with that, what do you think? Mary, I'm going to go to you first. What do you see happening in the big picture, philosophical picture, the cultural picture, and how do you see your election and your intention as part of that or not?
Yeah, I will say my experience in as a chief public defender, I think was a really good example of what happens when you stand. Sorry, I got Friends here. When you do stand up to the patriarchy, which is very often white men, and I think I learned a great lesson actually when I lost my job. And I can't remember if I told this story about having been at a bail forum and listening to a white prosecutor talk about people who were being held pretrial as thugs over and over and over. And a friend of mine at my table, who was a Black woman, looked at me and you know, it stopped the conversation. Everybody in the audience was looking around, and she looked at me and she said, "You got your people." And I said, "Yes, I do." Because I knew what that meant. I knew as a white woman in this space that I needed to say something or I would be complicit in what was being said. So I did say something, which was simply, "I'm asking you to rethink your use of the word thug because it's racially charged." And I think what happened after that was very surprising to me. In that was used in part for me not to be reappointed as chief public defender because I was accused of calling a quote unquote justice partner a racist. But what in reflection, and why I'm bringing it up now, is that what I was thinking about when I was thinking, well, what should I say? Because there was no question I was going to say something. It was, I know this is going to be unpleasant. Never once did it cross my mind that I could lose my job or that there could be anything different than that, even though I had many, many Black friends who talked about microaggressions and larger types of racist stuff. And I knew that that was something that they had to deal with many times a day. And so to see what happened to me, I think in what was a very privileged position, I'm a white woman, which is, you know, I have that privilege as well, that standing up and saying something about the patriarchy, and I kind of got crushed in there and I lost my job because of it. And so that was very eye-opening for me. And for those who are familiar with the criminal legal system, they certainly know that's the way it's been designed. It's been designed, it came after enslavement, and it's been designed to oppress Black and brown people, and it's been very effective at doing that. And that's something that we have to speak honestly about, and we have not done that thus far. If we can't speak honestly about that, we're not going to be able to get to the solutions to try to dismantle the systemic racism that has led to the situation we're in. So part of my role, and why I'm bringing this all up, is I'm very comfortable talking about systemic racism, and I'm intent, and that was one of the reasons I ran, and I'm intent on looking at those systems and trying to see what we can dismantle, which ultimately will actually keep our communities safer, and will make it a fairer system. So those are conversations we have to have, and I am going to have them.
Awesome. Maria, jump in. Thank you for that. That's refreshing, Mary.
I just had the new elect orientation just 2 days, 48 hours after receiving the news that we won, right? And you already feel the sense of that patriarchy coming at you, especially from the rural areas that aren't used to seeing this leadership with this beautiful melatonin skin that's coming in, and that's how we call it, right? And then you mentioned even in the earlier segment of the show is how does it feel? It's like we're a family. We're coming in as a village, regardless of what cities and districts we represent. We're cutting down those borders and looking at the state initiative here. And the challenges of the patriarchy is 100% been the battles our entire lives as women in any sector of work. It's the same if you're going into politics or, you know, you're applying for an administration job at a corporate facility. Like these are the issues that are faced. Now, it takes thick skin, but it also takes a reminder and telling folks of their privilege and calling it out and speaking it out. And I look at the momentum that's happening of so many leadership, and not just women, but men. You got to remember, a feminist isn't just a woman. A feminist is those that fight for women's rights. So I have so many brothers that are recognize their privilege of being white, or that are brothers that are from our Black and brown get down community that say, you know, it's for you to fight even harder for us, because it shouldn't be our job to teach people. That's not a job for us to go, we don't get paid to do that. It's taking away from us getting the job done. So, you know, making sure that that's reflective and folks are growing in harmony with that message. And I have felt such a great, strong support, but I've also want to call things out. And the first day that just being in that Capitol is like, hey, this is our space. This is the people's house, you know, and you had a white man coming up to us telling us that we weren't special. And we looked at each other and I said, we was, you know, our BIPOC folks coming together to speak, to talk about, we're going to have each other's back in these tunnels. We might have to carry satellite phones in these tunnels if our services go down, because safety is an issue. And if we're denying that, then we would be walking into, you know, a hole of darkness right now. So those conversations are what we're having openly and freely, and knowing that we are here and we are special because we have beat statistics, and we're going to continue to tell our communities that they are with us and that they're more and welcome in these spaces. And if that they feel uncomfortable, that we're in the position to lead, to let, we want to be here to defend that they should be comfortable. We should be comfortable in these spaces of leadership. And so I got to know our HR department at the state very well, because I said, you're going to probably be seeing me a lot, because I'm not taking this. We're not taking this. We're just going to keep saying it, that the time is here and the time is now, and it's going to be challenging, and we know, but what else is new? When folks say, you guys got to be careful out there. So we got to be careful just going to the grocery store down the block, you know, but that's the reason why we're here to do this work, so that we have more of a security. We have more of a liberation for humanity and justice.
Brenda, I see your wheels turning. Questions, comments, thoughts?
A fireball. I love it. And Mary, I'm going to take responsibility. My front page article on you a couple months ago, I love that article. So congratulations to you, because I knew then that you were a people's person, and you were colorblind. So kudos to you.
Well, can I jump in there on that? And because I do correct people when they say colorblind. I am not colorblind. I see color, and I value color, and I value ethnicity, and I value people's history. And I think that that's what we need to start doing. And I wanted to say one other thing, because this just occurred to me. Well, it's been occurring to me a lot. I have been interviewed throughout this campaign and even after the campaign. And one of the questions I get frequently asked is about my quote unquote inability to get along with people. And I think about that a lot. And I think I got along with many, many, many people. I had letters of support when I was chief public defender for many, many people. There were a couple of people who were upset about things that I said when I was calling out policies and practices that hurt our community. But the bigger picture is, I ask myself, would a man ever be asked those questions over and over and over? You know, can you get along with people? And so I think that's a function of the patriarchy too, that narrative gets put on me as somebody who really did collaborate with a lot of different people and agencies, but because I stood up and angered some people, I couldn't get along with people. So I think that that's another example of the patriarchy, and how we need to really move past that narrative.
Maria, your job is a part-time job. I believe it's not full-time. And what's your regular job? What have you been doing as your regular job for the past while? I know that your passion is creativity, productivity, art, and culture. But talk about what are you doing? And where my question is going to lead to, just so you know, is how do you manage your art, your creative that is with you, that is in you, that really you are. You are a walking, moving spirit of creativity. And
well,
so,
my passion is my profession, and it has been. I'm a small-time business owner of Soda Rico LLC, which is a Latinx record label and artist management and licensing company. So in the middle of a campaign, I haven't stopped the music. I've been licensing and creating music for television series and specifically for shows that represent our communities and our Black and Brown and our urban communities, with the agenda that how we sound and how we sing and what our rhythms sound like. You know, when folks are going to the theater to Wakanda Forever, you know, they don't know that, you know, my hands with my co-producers are folks that go to those drawing board tables to make sure that those rhythms sound like how our people and our ancestors sound like. So I have just the beauty to be able to have a profession that I've really built from hands-on with the rhythms and the history of my ancestors to be the artist that I am. You know, we've been writing scripts on how it looks like to be folks from community going into state legislature, because if we don't tell our stories, who will?
Documentation, right?
It's all about documentation. So in the midst of this, we've been documenting, and also I'm a youth worker. I have been a youth worker, like I said, since I was a youth, but I direct mentorship programming for Twin Cities Mobile Jazz Project under the executive direction of my mentor, Andre Fisher. So it's really working on how you take the industry of the recording arts and performing arts and theater into youth work and literacy programming building. We have a partnership as the director of that mentorship with the St. Paul Park and Recs for over 5 years, where we offer in-school programming and now leading an after-school programming through 3 park and recs, from serving our Frogtown community in St. Paul, our Dayton's Bluff community, and my beloved West Side at El Rio Vista. So the work is with the youth. I'm around youth. I'm here for the youth, and I'm looking so forward to bringing those youth into the Capitol, because here a lot of these kids have never been to the Capitol, and it's right across the street from where they live. It's right across the bridge from where they live. They see it every day, but they don't know what goes down in there. They don't know that we're there fighting for them. So I am so excited to be able to take my students who said, Maria, we've never been there before, to make sure that they know that they can come every day into that space, and that space is the people's space. And serving for 2 years on the Capitol Architect and Area Project Board's Public Engagement Task Force, appointed by Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, my perspective as an artist is changing a lens and making sure that our culture is represented in there. For the first time ever, there is a Dia de los Muertos altar up at the state capitol, honoring the celebration of the Mexican and Latin American, holiday, celebrating and honoring our ancestors. And it was so beautiful to see that, because we had been meeting for 2 years under these Zoom squares, and folks saying that things can't happen. It's going to take 40 years. And I'm like, no, it's going to happen now. And to see that there is a reflection of dedication and hard work, and making sure that our artists are being represented, our artists, and arts for all people, not that it's traumatizing art, because there's a lot of that going up there. And that's something that I recognize, especially walking around with my indigenous sisters who are newly elected, like, Alicia Klozowski, and also folks that are serving their second term, like Heather Keeler, that have to see artwork that is not reflective to true history, that is damaging, that hurts. And we're in there letting them know that this is Native land, and we're going to make a change to that.
Let me ask you both, how do you, and what do you have in mind, what's in your heart at the moment about how you should, and this is not you, the individual, but you, the institution now, the seat holder, should lay claim on the $9 billion surplus. What do you think your constituents in our communities need and should get, and in a way that reflects equity, fairness, and our expectations? And then Mary, same question. What do you need to grow the effectiveness and the scope and the transforming mission that you've described already of the Hennepin County Attorney? And how does that $9 billion fund there maybe fold into your expectations? Mary, go first, and then Maria.
Okay. I'm a big believer in public schools and supporter in public schools. So I'm hoping a lot of that surplus goes to help our schools. In terms of the county attorney's office, there are decisions that we can make, but we also need the help in terms of programming. So I think we're failing our youth tremendously. We're not dealing with their trauma, helping them with trauma-informed services, culturally specific services. So I don't know where that money comes from right now, but we need more there to help our youth and not to send them to programs that are out of their community. We also need resources for restorative justice programs that work across the country. And so I look at it in terms of public safety, which actually means if we could implement a lot of these programs, it would help youth with their trauma. That would help. When I talk about restorative practices, I'm talking about expanding that to include some violent crimes when the person who's been harmed wants that as an option. That has been proven to be incredibly successful in other programs, including one in New York called Common Justice. But it's a long program, and we need the resources to be able to do that. We need resources for violence prevention. I did a lot of door knocking and some events at Huntington Apartments in Brooklyn Park. And that is a self-contained sort of village of 3,000 people who are living in terrible living conditions, mold and stuff like that, but also crime, drugs, that kind of thing. So what can we do as a county in partnering to try to prevent violence and make sure that the living conditions there are someplace you would want a family member to live? So that's really important to me too. So right now I'm working on all of these relationships. Some of that may come from the legislature, some of it may come from the county, but it has to come from somewhere because we need to start doing these things to make our community safer and more just.
Maria, go ahead, Maria.
I want to echo Mary with the education. This is something that with the trifecta, we have ability to get public funding for our public schools, funding for our public school education. And that braids a word that you heard a lot on my campaign trail is braiding our policy initiatives and braiding education with accessible healthcare for all. We need healthcare services for these youth, for these teachers, and equity for our nurses in these sectors. It's all braided together. If one sector is not doing right, how do you expect our kids to excel in a system that's not serving them? Because we need physical healthcare. We need mental health care. We need accessibility to nutrition programs that are serving our children. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm fighting for accessible insulin that should be free. We got a cap copay just with the grassroots organizing. And what did I lose? I think I lost you guys.
No, we still see you.
I think... trying to find you guys. I'm trying to find you.
We still see you.
There you go. There you go.
These
Macs are connected to your daughter's FaceTime, everything, the technology, but also that's a part of that. Making sure that there's accessibility and funding to our youth is by far number one on the agenda for me, with making sure that our educational systems are representative of our youth, that there is accessibilities for our teachers and I spoke highly and for our teachers who are serving children with disabilities. We're looking at a caste system, not just in society, but deeply disambiguating our schools. And if we don't fight for public school funding, we're going to see the rise in crime. How are we going to break statistics if we're not fixing the problem? It's not just putting a Band-Aid over a wound. Those wounds are a system of where these kids are dropping off. These are our children that we're seeing not having the resources and being challenged by standardized testings that do not fit for our children. They shouldn't be boxed in. again, this is about learning in full circle and finding ways so that we can have the capacity to have our kids excel to their highest potential and have that choice, and not have the system choose for where they're going to be boxed in. And we know where that box is. It's literally a cell. It's a militarized formation of getting our kids not to excel in education, but as soon as they become adults and before adults, are they going to survive these streets? You know, are they going to survive this opiate crisis? Are they going to survive this gun violence? So we're talking about braiding all of these. And there's enough money. This is the largest. I like to say it's closer to $10 billion than $9 billion. And we've got some heavy hitters at the table that have been reelected and new hitters on their roster that are going to go up to bat to make sure that we are not going to grand slam here.
Let me ask you both, the current discussion is on legalization of adult recreational use of marijuana. What's the discussion where you all are, you as a prosecutor, Mary Moriarty, and you as a legislator now, but as a young person, and maybe with a different cultural sense. But that sense, I'm sure, looks at how laws have penalized our people, you know, have been used to destroy us. And now that that's changing, the structures will perhaps benefit everybody but us unless we organize to ensure that our people are part of that process as well. Mary, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's far past time that marijuana was legalized. It is essentially legal for many people in the state. It just depends on who gets prosecuted for it. And unfortunately, it is way too many Black and brown people that get prosecuted. And even now, I remember I was chief public defender. I was at a meeting and I heard the county attorney say that he was no longer charging marijuana possession cases. And it turned out that that was not true, that there were a bunch of exceptions to it, including if you had a prior marijuana charge, which makes no sense to me. So my hope is that the legislature will come up with legislation on marijuana. But what I can do as county attorney is also to be working on expunging records for people who have marijuana, because there are plenty of people who have already been harmed, as you've said. I mean, I can certainly develop a policy saying that we're not going to prosecute possession of marijuana, but we also have to go back and repair the harm that has been made to people of color, in particular in our community. And then this is outside my purview, but I really would. So I'm just throwing this out there. Making it legal, you know, I am hoping that our state does something to make it licensing much more available to Black people who were harmed, so that they can benefit from the money that will be made by legalization. So that's just my pitch, a little outside my purview, but it's way over time that we legalize marijuana.
Maria, what do you think?
I echo, it is way over time. I worked in other states in internships growing up in California, and speaking with legislative leaders in Colorado. It's been 10 years since it's been legalized in Colorado and in Washington, to learn how we can help our youth, as well as Black and brown individuals, for men and women who have been criminalized for far too long, and in an area of also a holistic avenue with medicinal. It's something that I have, you know, really been conscious of as a type 1 diabetic, is where have we gone? These are tribal, you know, remedies. So really bridging that and making sure that there's a force that is justified, so that when we do legalize it, because I'll speak it into existence, we are decriminalizing, we are expunging these records that have been taking away jobs from our brothers and our sisters, that have been becoming an issue, has been an issue in the housing sector. If you have a felony because of marijuana charges, there's a need for us to legalize. And I believe that with this blue wave that's happened in this trifecta, we're getting closer to it. I've spoken with folks that are no longer that just retired from the legislators, such as Senator Senator Melissa Lopez Franson and Ryan Winkler, who they both from the House and Senate were taking leadership positions and drafting up a bill and seeing how we can make that better, but also representative and highly reflective of decriminalizing those charges that has trampled, that has affected, that has traumatized, that has cut leadership in our communities.
Maria, we're coming close to close, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you if you've got some work that you've done recently, or if you would freestyle. I love your art. I love you as an artist. And I don't want to impose on you, but I'm willing to ask if you can do something.
Well, I will be performing at our for the re-election celebration of Attorney General Keith Ellison this evening with my band. And it was great to be able to tour to get the vote out for the AG throughout the state with him and Bernie Sanders, with Senator Sanders. But it's great to freestyle. I've been asked at the orientation if we're going to do that on the House floor. I look forward to bringing a little bit of hip hop rhymes from street politics now into the people's house of the politics. But thank you to Insight. We've got a light insight. I'm grateful to be here as a guest with Mary Moriarty. Even though I was on the other side of the county, I was still going to the party in favor of many changes, and salute to the Council of MPLS. I know you'll be hearing a lot of calls, and we're hoping that we can put our kids to be able to make phone calls of leadership and not from a prison cell using collect. This is how we are going to inspect every angle of legislation. We're going to discuss this proclamation that doesn't give everyone independence. How is about a constitution without any music? We're going to be loud. We're going to be bold. For the grown, I don't say old. For the elders, to the children born in St. Paul with $50 in their account, shout out to Mayor Carter. I'm going to bring bars and rap like I'm Beyonce and Sean Jay-Z Carter. Hey, driver's licenses, we're going to get that passed so when the brown folks is getting asked, they can card us.
Oh, all right. Drop the mic. Okay. All right. Well, Maria, so tonight, big party tonight. Talk about that.
Yeah, big party, turf club.
That's so cool.
It's gonna be a turf club. I know the snow's out. I've been shoveling all day and in between Zooms. But 7:00, doors open at Turf Club. It's free. It's open to the public. Make sure you're there in support of my dear friend. I call him, the village uncle, AG Keith Ellison, who's been there for us, who influenced us to vote. So here, my dog, he's ready to rap too. But there he is, 7 p.m. Turf Club, University in Snelling. Shout out to the people's lawyer, Keith Ellison. We're going to go celebrate him big tonight.
Maria, thank you so much. Mary Moriarty, thank you so much. I'll be calling on you guys, and I want you to presume and assume that your relationship with Insight News is one that you can count on us to communicate vision, values, opportunities to our people. This is a collaboration. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Gracias.
And for those of you who are listening and watching, thank you for being a part of this. Thanks to Diana Hawkins. Thanks to the Phillipps, my writing partner, Brenda, Lyle-Gray. Like and subscribe to our platforms. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're generating content through, what's the other one called? Oh, there it is. There's a note. Join the conversation. So we want to be with you. We love this opportunity. Join us again every day, 1:00. I'm Al McFarlane. Take care.